All right, so another very good thing that we should be learning is that we should use enums. And you might be asking, but why should we use them and where should we use them? Where enums are very good for static content, and we have a very good example in the sense that it's a bad example of usage of duplicated code in our adapter. So let's navigate to the project and let's take the restaurants adapter, just like I did here. And in the onBind viewHolder method, we have this duplicated code, this kind of repetitive code. And if you remember, in our first video, we described what was happening here. Based on a restaurant type that we got from the server, we are basically displaying several fields. Let's hide this here. We were displaying an icon for a type of restaurant, for takeaway, a text, and a particular color for the text, for every type of restaurant. And this code is really repetitive, really duplicated. It doesn't make any sense to have all of this code like this. And if we look here, we can see that we have the actual proof. We have different icons, different text color here, and we have basically all of these fields hard-coded, and also the text itself. So how can we fix all of this code here? Well, what we can do is basically go to the project and go here in this package and create a new class. Let's call this class restaurant type, like this. And well, we have this restaurant type here, which is going to hold some fields, but more importantly, this is going to hold some types and with some static content. And we're going to have takeaway as a type here, and we are going to have also drive-through here as a type, and we are going to also have the eat-in as a type. So let's add here eat-in as well. Perfect. So we have these types, but what field are they going to hold? Well, let's look here and we see that we have a drawable, a text, and a color. So we can go back and define in the constructor of the enum a text of type string. I mean, doesn't really matter. And a drawable ID here like this. And we are going to call this of type int. And also have a color text ID or text color ID. Let's call this text color ID, which is going to be an int as well. Now let's populate these fields, and in the adapter we have the takeaway first with the drawable of takeaway, but let's start with the text. That would make more sense, and let's paste this here, the text, which is going to be hard-coded, the drawable ID, which is going to be this one here, and also we are going to be pasting the color of the text that we just talked about as the last field. Let's do the same thing for 18, and I'm going to let you pause this and do this for yourself. I'm going to really rewind this and make this even faster. All right, so we finished basically adding the fields here in the enums. And these enums are going to be a class that are going to hold all of this static content that we have to display. These are not coming from the server. We have to usually hard code them in the app, and we basically end up with this kind of logic, this kind of duplicated code. So the first thing that we should do is go here in the restaurant display type. So let's press Ctrl B or Command B on this type here. And remember that this is a display item. This is basically what we use as an item to prepare the data to be displayed. So instead of having the type as a string, we're gonna call this a restaurant type here, which is gonna be much more helpful, because right now going into the adapter, we can see that we have this really bad error. Let's copy paste the code that we use for one of the types of the restaurant, and also let's delete this code. We don't really need it anymore. All right. And going back, we don't want to set these hard-coded values. We want to take the restaurant type that we know that's an enum, as you can see, a restaurant display item here, and the type is going to be a restaurant type, and take the drawable ID from here. And right now, we kind of have this rendering dynamic. We don't really care what is the drawable ID or the text here, because these are basically stored in the type that we receive in this adapter. So here we're going to have a text and also a text color for the color of this text. So let's go and select text color ID. Perfect. So right now we have cleaned the code in on bind view holder here. It's really clean right now. And we don't have that crazy when with a lot of duplicated code. But still, if we go to the restaurant activity, where we are going to face an issue in the prepare restaurants methods, because the restaurant here that we receive as a filtered restaurant, and remember this is a different object, well, this restaurant has a type string, and we need a restaurant type object here, actually an enum. So what we can do, we can wrap this in an when right here, and we can basically decide what enum we should be passing here. So we need the values from the adapter, but we kind of deleted those. So let's go in the mocks here, and let's take the values that we had here as types. So if it's eating, let's go back in the restaurant activity here. If it's eating, then we want to display when we want to send a restaurant type of type eating. Let's select this here and do the same thing for the other two. Actually, for the last one, we are going to suppose that this is a default one. So let's call this, the second one should be a takeaway. So let's put a field here and select takeaway. Perfect. And right now in the last one, we are going to return restaurant type drive-through as a default options. So this also is going to hold the value for the branch for drive-through. So right now we have this prepare restaurants method, which is basically mapping the field, the type field from the server, which is a string, and is mapping this to an enum. And this enum, if we press Ctrl B or Command B here, basically holds all of the content that we have. So in the adapter here, we can see that we only have 3 lines. And I promise you this is going to be much more helpful, because I've had projects where some screens needed static content like 10 or 15 fields. And imagine having a when with so many fields. And it's true that here in the restaurant activity, we have a when, but in this when we are only assigning a enum type. So here we set the type, and in the adapter we basically set all the fields from the enum. And these can be like 10, 15, 20 fields. In our case, we only had 3. But regardless, this is a very good practice because you don't have duplicated code. The code is much more cleaner, and we can basically encapsulate all of this static hard-coded content within the app very nicely with an enum.